Hey, welcome back to the Soul Pod. This is Stacy. The author Spencer Johnson once said, "Integrity is telling myself the truth, and honesty is telling the truth to other people." This video is for anyone who wants to rebuild self-trust without shame or guilt. For anybody who wants more joy in their life. Have you ever made a justification, just to end up finding yourself playing it over and over again in your head later, maybe over days, ruminating over it? There's a reason for this. The reason for it is because we're out of integrity with ourselves. There's a deep core of us that knows the difference between right and wrong in terms of our own personal moral compass, what is right and what is wrong. And when we do something that we deem as wrong, it bothers us at a very deep level. This video is for anyone who wants to get back into integrity with themselves, without shame, without regret, and to live a more joyful and authentic life. If that's you, buckle up. Hey, we all do it. We all do it. We all justify every now and then. Maybe we say it's just once. It's no big deal. No one's getting hurt. Everybody does it sometimes. Just little justifications, to make it okay. Feels small, but it's really not. Maybe we even tell a lie, a little small lie to avoid the discomfort of having to be honest with someone. Someone asks our genuine opinion, and it's not going to be pretty, so we just stuff it. And it sits there wrong in us because it just doesn't feel right. Because it's not. Because it's not acceptable to us. The problem is that we're training ourselves to understand that we're not trustworthy to ourselves. We're not trustworthy to ourselves. We judge ourselves now as being untrustworthy. This leads to less joy, less personal integrity, less peace, and less personal alignment. To get that back, we have to change the pattern. The good news is I've got a tool to help you do that. In his writings on ethics and character, Dennis Prager wrote, "Very rarely do people make big compromises with their integrity. Almost every compromise is a small one that is easily justified." See, the issue here is this. We make little small justifications to do the things that, all right, we're going to do them for whatever reason. Maybe we do them because we're desperate. Maybe we do them because of peer pressure or feeling some other sort of pressure to do them. You might make a judgment call at work about taking a shortcut with something because you have a coworker who's getting ahead of you and you want that promotion. Anything like that. It seems like a small thing, but it's not. Because over time it adds up. And the reason it adds up is because psychologically speaking, when we make a compromise, we've now moved away from our center. We're no longer who we were. We're an altered version of who we were. And now the next decision we make is from here instead of here. And as we compromise more, we move further and further from our center. Now, as an extreme example, let me tell you the story of an officer in New York City named Michael Dowd, who in the 80s was busted and sent to prison for more than 12 years and was referred to as the dirtiest cop in the world at the time. Ultimately, he was convicted for a bunch of different things, narcotics running, robbing dealers, drug dealers, tipping off the mob about police activities. But the thing is, as bad as this guy sounds, when you go back and you look at his story, he started off as a good cop. And when he tells you his story, and when he tells the story, he talks about how he got there. And this is how it started. He's a cop working in New York City, not paid very well, can't even afford to live in the city, as most cops in New York can't. So he's doing these jobs. He's seeing crazy amounts of money every day from all these drug dealers, all the cocaine going through New York City. And one day he and his friend, they do a bust on this apartment and they find a crazy amount of cash, like something like $16,000, and then guns and weed and all kinds of other stuff. And they're looking at this bag full of cash. They ask themselves, who's it going to hurt? Who's it going to hurt if we take it? There's no victim in that crime. It's a victimless crime. It's no big deal. They justified, and they took the money and some of the other stuff too. Now, I think that a lot of people could make that justification in that moment and just go, well, what's going to happen to the money anyway? Like this 5, 6 arguments you can make. Your eyes just going to go to the city coffers and they're going to spend it badly. This isn't, this isn't money that's going to go to charity or help anybody. And I'm not very well paid. You can go down that rabbit hole, right? That was the initial justification. And Officer Dowd talks about this later. He says the next thing that happens is, someone says, hey, I'll give you a lobster dinner and $200 if you could forget about that fine that I've got, if you could sign off on it. He's like, all right. Much easier to make that second one, right? And then after that, it starts coming down to bigger and bigger and bigger compromises. And over a period of 7 or 8 years, he finally got to the point where he compromised himself so much that he was tipping off the mob about police activities, which puts your coworkers directly in danger's path because they're aware they're coming, right? Could cause the death of a coworker. I mean, this is a big slide. Now, this is an extreme example, like I said, but it's a really good way of looking at how we, through a period of justification, can go places we never thought we could go before. And it's all because it has this cumulative effect, adding on and adding on and adding on. How do you fix that? The way you fix it is getting back to yourself. Getting back to yourself. So we're going to dive into that right now. Before we dive into the tool, I want to talk about psychologically what's going on here. You see that feeling we get when we know we've done something that we don't approve of? It's called cognitive dissonance. This goes back into a lot of research around this. It's happened over the last 50 years or so. There's this thing that happens that we feel deep inside when we make a choice that we know is not acceptable. It's this physical reaction you feel, that thing we were talking about, where you wake up the next day and you're not okay with you. You feel off. You feel like, and you're replaying it over and over again in your head. The cognitive dissonance happens before that. It happens in the very moment you do it, or right before you do it, when you're making justifications. That's why we make the justifications, to bridge that gap between what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, so that we can kind of close the gap there and be able to go, okay, I'm going to justify this and make it okay in my mind, because the pull between what's acceptable and what's not is completely uncomfortable if we don't do that. The only way you can do it without justification is to be sociopathic or otherwise on the spectrum of some sort of psychological disorder that would allow you to walk away from the sensation of that feeling. Perhaps you wouldn't even have it, depending on the condition you're dealing with, right? So that cognitive dissonance makes us come up with a reason, some sort of explanation to ourselves, our deepest selves, why it is that this is acceptable when we know that it's not. You see? Now let's look at the spiritual side. So the spiritual side goes like this. As we do these things, when we make justifications and we do things that are outside of the norm of what's acceptable for us, it takes a thin veil and lays it over what we can think of as your soul. Like it's now blocking out a very small amount of light, just a little bit. You still see opaque colors, maybe even see through it. But the more of those we lay over our soul, the more justifications, the more lies, the further we move from ourselves, the more disconnected we are from our deepest parts, right? Our deepest core self, our soul. And in doing that, we're further and further away from joy. If you've made a lot of mistakes, if you've had moments in your life where you've made bad choices and you knew they were bad choices and you knew they were unjustifiable choices, and you get up each day and you feel miserable, you feel empty, you feel hollow, you feel fill in the blank here, that's because you've done that. You've laid enough veils across your soul that you've now blocked out the light. And the good news is that what you've done, you can remove as well. You see, at the core of all of us, we are perfect little beings. We're not hateful. We're not dishonest. We're in integrity. And let me explain why I know this is true. Look into a baby's eyes. Is that baby out of integrity? Is it a liar? No. We all come into this world with complete integrity. We only lose it by choice as we grow and we evolve and we have our adaptations. So knowing that, we know we can get back to where we came from. It just takes a little bit of effort, maybe a nice, simple tool. The tool I want to share today is called the justification pause. When you feel yourself start to justify, this requires a certain amount of self-awareness. And it'll take some time. If you do it, you'll get very good at it, but it takes some self-awareness right off the top. When you catch yourself starting to justify that it's okay to do something that you feel that tug that it's not, it's important to stop at that moment and listen. Put your hand on your chest and breathe in. Take 3 deep breaths and ask yourself, what am I avoiding? Why are you doing this? Does it honor your deepest values? Is it really okay? Is it really okay with you at your deepest self? As you do this, you'll go through this and you'll make a small loving shift with yourself. Not only will it keep you from making that choice you're about to make, but it'll start building higher levels of integrity in you. Each time you do this, it's like you have a vase that's slowly getting filled up with every drop. And as you get more filled up with these good actions, these good decisions, the more you force out all those veils you've laid across yourself that have been obscuring the sun, obscuring the light that should be getting into you. Do you follow? So for the next 30 days, make a commitment to every time you recognize this, just stop, pause, put your hand on your chest, take a breath or 2 or 3, and ask yourself, is this okay with me? Is this acceptable? Each time you add another drop to that vase, you free yourself. You get closer and closer and closer to your integrity. And in the end, what will happen is that you will actually do this reflexively. You won't even think about it any longer. When things come up for me now, I recognize them. I see the story I'm telling myself. And in that moment, I get to make a choice. I get to choose, okay, knowing what I know is true, do I do this thing or do I not do this thing? And it's very rarely you'll find anything within that realm of making that choice that you know is outside of acceptable to you, that you'll go, yeah, I'm going to do it. Because the vast majority of the time, it's not. Thank you for being here. Thanks for following the show. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe for me. It does help the algorithm, strangely enough. The more people are clicking on that, the more people are, well, they get this in front of them and it's recommended to them. If you haven't checked out the Soul Podcast yet, check it out. I think you'll like it. It's a pretty darn good show. It's like this, but we go a bit deeper. It's a little more fun at times as well. If you want more light getting to your soul, make the shift today. Use the justification pause. Pause, recognize, ask yourself the question. I'll see you on the next video.